Streetsville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm honored, really honored to join this debate today to support my colleague from Brampton West who presented this motion. And I'm very proud for a number of reasons, the first of which is because I am Polish-Canadian, one of the first female Polish-Canadian members of Parliament I think this House has seen. So I'm very proud to stand up and represent the Polish community and support John Paul II, our Pope. And second, of course, I'm a Roman Catholic and a practicing Roman Catholic, and I think that's very important that I stand up for the Roman Catholics in Canada as well. It's a very important piece of legislation. It will celebrate Pope John Paul II Day every April 2nd on the anniversary of the Pope's death. It would be a day in memory for Pope John Paul, who was beloved internationally, not only in Poland, but in Canada and abroad, everywhere the Pope traveled, and he was one of our most traveled popes. And why do we have days to celebrate the memory of great people such as John Paul II? We do that to remember the significant accomplishments of that person's life and what they've contributed to history, and particularly history of our country and the larger historical events. This was a great man. Not only was he a scholar, he was a philosopher. His simple, humble beginnings in Poland as a priest, and before that as an actor and as a teacher. And he was a charismatic and moral leader to not only the Catholic community across the world, but to everyone. Pope John Paul, humble beginnings, as I mentioned, in Poland. He reigned for 27 years, one of the longest reigns of any pope ever. And of course, he was one of the youngest popes of the 20th century. There are a number of reasons why we should support this bill, many because of the great number of achievements, as I mentioned, of Pope John Paul II. First, he was one of the architects of the defeat of communism. He was one of the leaders of the Solidarity movement, very significant in our history, of course, and particularly to the Polish people. He is and remains a hero. And of course, he is the first non-Italian pope since the 15th century. And importantly for Canadians, particularly Polish Canadians, there are over 1 million Polish Canadians in Canada that would celebrate this day each and every year. This was a very accomplished pope. He had a large following of supporters, traveled around the world. He completed over 102 pastoral visits outside of Italy. The Pope first visited Canada in 1984 and has visited 3 times since. Let me find some of the quotes, came in 2002 on National Youth Day, and I, in fact, myself billeted a number of youth who came from the former Eastern Europe to celebrate this day. Young people from all parts of the world gathered for World Youth Day at the Downsview Centre in Toronto. With their gifts of intelligence and heart, they represented the future of the world. But they also bear the marks of humanity, and that, too, often knows and understands peace and justice. The Pope had said at that time, "Too many lives begin and end without joy and without hope." But he proved that there was hope in this world. And that was one of the principal reasons for Youth Day. He spoke to us directly as Canadians. Canadians are heir to an extraordinary rich humanism, enriched even more by the blend of different cultural elements. But the core of our heritage is the spiritual and transcendent vision of life based on Christian revelation, which gave vital impetus to our development as a free and democratic and caring society, recognized throughout the world as champions, as we are, of human rights and human dignity. And I was astounded on how proud the youth were that attended World Youth Day, proud to be Catholics and proud to be there celebrating this Pope who valued the contributions that youth had made. And one of the other reasons, of course, was that the Pope sought reconciliation to the Jewish community and opened a dialogue with many other faiths. So those were some of the key reasons that I believe that we should support John Paul II Day. And I hope that there will be other members of the House and we'll reach out to you to encourage you to support this very important bill as well. In the Ontario legislature, a similar type of bill to honor Pope John Paul II had been enacted. In fact, it had passed first reading and even second reading, but unfortunately it had died in prorogation. So we are attempting to bring back this honor for Pope John Paul II for not only Ontarians, but for all of Canadians, so that we can all celebrate. In addition, this is a man who I've attempted to describe, who has done great works, and he's been recognized not only among his peers, but among Canadians and everyone across the world. But people in the church have extended to him the title of Venerable. Pope Benedict has placed this title upon him, which is one step towards sainthood. One step will be completed later this year, rather. It's a 2-year process, but it's been expedited so that this great glory will be placed upon our beloved Pope. And as we know, as I mentioned earlier, he was one of the great reasons that communism had fallen non-violently in the Soviet Union. Quite unbelievably, Soviet Union fell, communism fell without a single bullet being fired. Pope John Paul's 1979 trip in Poland was described as a fulcrum of revolution which led to the collapse of communism. As Timothy Ash put it a different way, without the Pope, no solidarity. Without solidarity, no Gorbachev. Without Gorbachev, no fall of communism. In fact, even Mikhail Gorbachev had said it would have been impossible without the Pope, and he credits John Paul II for being a key factor in the fall of the Soviet Union. My very humble roots, as I described, also come from Poland, and my family left, obviously because of the scourge of communism. They left Poland and they sought for work and refuge in France. My grandfather served in a Polish division of the French army to fight against both Hitler and, of course, later did not return to Poland because of the rise of communism in the Eastern European bloc. So that's one of the major reasons we came to Canada, to seek freedom. And we have Pope John Paul II to thank for the fall of communism in Eastern Europe. As I had mentioned as well, another one of the major accomplishments of the Pope, and nobody will disagree, that he provided a bridge to bring in other religions. And I'd like to offer a quote from the Anti-Defamation League in 2003, which issued a statement congratulating Pope John Paul II on entering his 25th year of the papacy and complimenting him on the role he had in bridging the divide between the Jewish faith and the Catholic Church. And the quote says, "More change for the better took place in his 27-year papacy than in nearly 2,000 years before." And there are many other examples of that as well, Madam Speaker. Many attempts to make a bridge to many other faith communities, especially even with the Muslim community. Pope John Paul himself, when he was in Casablanca on August 19th, 1985 in Morocco, said, "Christians and Muslims, we have many things in common. As believers and human beings, we believe in the same world marked by the signs of hope, but also of multiple signs of anguish. As for us, Abraham is the very model of God, of submission to his will and confidence in his goodness. We believe in the same God, the one God, the living God, etc." He reached out to the Muslim community when he was Pope, and he reached out to the Jewish community as well. He reached out to many communities, and we know that in 1993 he held a meeting with over 120 religious leaders from around the world of different religions and different Christian denominations to foster some unity and respect among the various religious sects. He was a well-traveled man, as I said. He was a remarkable world leader. He was known as the traveling Pope. He visited 129 countries and attracted some of the largest crowds in human history. As many as 5 million people came to see him in Manila in 1995. When he came to Canada on more than one occasion, of course he came in 2002 as the World Youth Day, as I already described, over 800,000 people came out to meet him and to pray with him. As Kofi Annan had said, he is a tireless advocate for peace. When Pope John Paul II died, the outpouring of grief at his funeral showed itself how strong he was and how respected he was, both as a religious leader and, more importantly, as a world leader. At his funeral and his Requiem Mass on April 8, 2005, he was said to have set world records for both attendance and the number of heads of state that were present at the funeral. It was the single largest gathering of heads of state in history, surpassing the funerals of Winston Churchill and other world leaders, kings, queens, and leaders of many countries. It has been one of the largest single pilgrimages at the time. And for this reason, Madam Speaker, because of the great man that he was, I hope everyone will join me and my colleague from Brampton West in supporting this motion and supporting this bill to commemorate Pope John Paul II.